So, welcome to today's webinar. As a bit of an introduction, I'm James Keeler from the customer success team at Capsule, and I'm joined by some of our fantastic marketing, some of my favorite colleagues, who I will introduce you to very shortly. It is great to have you all with us today, so thanks for joining us. We're going to be discussing how we use Transpond to deliver our marketing strategy. As a little bit of housekeeping before we start, this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared with everyone who's signed up to the webinar once this session's ended today. So if you do have any queries or anything you want to revisit after the session, you'll be able to watch that. Even for those who haven't been able to attend, they will receive a link as well if they've signed up. For any questions you have during the session today, you can ask those in the Q&A section below. So we have the chat section and the Q&A section. The Q&A button is much better for making sure we can answer all of your questions. So if you do have any questions throughout, my colleague Keith from the customer success team at Capsule will be there answering all of your questions. Without further ado, let's get started with some introduction. So I'll start with you, Kasia. Who are you and what part do you play in delivering our marketing strategy?
Hi. So my name is Kasia. I am the product marketing manager at Transpond and Capsule. So my day-to-day is basically making sure that the cool stuff that we're developing behind the scenes actually gets seen and discovered by you guys, our customers. So, whenever we're developing cool new features, we look at, how do we make those public? How do we make sure our customers can find them easily and know about the value that they can bring? And I work with Liv on lots of cool ways in which to do that. She's the creative genius behind it all, and I'm just I'm just behind the scenes there, like, oh, we need to do some stuff. But yeah, so that's me. Over to Liv.
I would not say that you are just behind the scenes, whatever. You are equally creative and a genius. Hi, I'm Liv. I am the product content manager at Capsule and Transpond. I work closely with Kasia, as she said, and with our content lead to produce things like blogs, emails, website page, and so on to help people who are interested in Capsule, as well as our Capsule and Transpond customers, learn how they can use our products, like the best way they can use them, and like sort of tips and tricks, and also to promote those new features and updates that Kasia just mentioned.
Thank you both. That's definitely highlighting the fact that it is definitely a team effort, isn't it? Everyone's got different skills and they all come together to produce that final product. I think it'd be helpful to start by setting the scene today, by framing some of the challenges that all marketing teams have to overcome. So it's kind of one for both of you. What do you think are the biggest challenges that marketing teams are facing today?
I'll start with this one. I guess it's there's probably a list of things as long as my arm that I could reel off here. But I'd say the top two are probably budget. I think I've worked at companies with, 700 people and companies with 10 people in them, and you always have those same budget constraints. You always kind of want to do the most marketing you can, but there's always that trade-off of, you've got to spend more money to be able to do more marketing. The budget is always a big one, and understanding, okay, if I don't have, the entire company's revenue and my dispense to play with, then what do you prioritize? Where do you start? Where are your audience? Like, where are your customers? Where are your prospects actually hanging out? And that's kind of what you've got to decide to focus on. And then the second point I'd probably say is the idea of the attention spans of people these days, as I'm sure most of you on this webinar are kind of aware of. Like, the attention spans of people are very short these days. So as a marketer, I think even in the 14 years or so that I've been working, you have way less time from which someone first comes across your brand, sees a piece of content that you put out there, from them seeing it to will they actually carry on reading this. So it's that competing for attention is what I'm trying to say. Like, that is something that is becoming harder and harder. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because in a way that forces you to think outside the box a bit more, challenge yourselves and be a bit more creative. And that's something that we've definitely got to focus on in our team at the moment, of like, you know, how can we like compete through the noise and make actual transponders brands stand out a bit more. So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Kasia. I suppose that leads us nicely into a question I wanted to ask Liv. How has the way we approach marketing evolved in the past couple of years?
I suppose as someone who has predominantly worked in like the content side of marketing, so producing things like blogs and landing pages, we've always been like the approach has always been like producing like a large volume of things to get people onto your website and get noticed by search engines, and really putting a lot of work and probably quite a lot of money into like search engine optimization. But obviously since search engines like Google have changed, they've got this like AI overview, people aren't really as incentivized to scroll any further down and click, which would give you a bit more opportunity to build your brand or introduce them to the rest of your website and stuff. So it's kind of a bit of a new challenge of working out how you can use that. I think there's a new thing, like not so much SEO anymore as GEO, which is generative engine optimization, I think. Can't say I know a lot about that one, but it's a new thing that a lot of marketers I think are going to have to learn about. But I mean, also AI has its benefits, really, doesn't it? Because it can really help you boost your efficiency, really help you produce a lot more work, or like strategize, come up with plans and stuff. So it's just making sure that you learn how to do it well, but don't entirely rely on it to the point that you're no different from anyone else. Kind of what Kasia was saying, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think I was speaking with a customer yesterday about this, and I think there's some research has shown that with the new Google AI summaries that come up when you search for something on Google, I think less than 1% of people using those summaries actually click through to the source anymore, which is quite commonly like something like a blog. So definitely has sort of a slightly negative effect in that way. But at the same time, you know, Transpond has AI content assistant. You can use it to create subject headings as well that are catchy. So it's one of those things, you can definitely leverage it in the right way, but it does create new challenges for people in marketing. Thanks for that, Liv. So let's now discuss how we're using Transpond in practice. So if we could start with campaign planning and automation. Liv, could you walk us through an example of a marketing initiative we planned and then ran through Transpond?
Yeah, there's a few things. One of the things that I work on monthly, and that maybe some of these people might have seen, is that I produce a couple of newsletters, and they're mostly sent to our customers, but you can also sign up to join them on our Capsule website, and that's using a Transpond web form. But then what's happening is in the background, sorry, is that the automation sees when that information is added to a list, and then sends out like an email sequence, or the newsletter in this case. So it means that instead of having to sort of manually add people to a list every time that they want to subscribe, it can just sort it out for you, which is a lot easier. And then another one that we do, oh, here we are, this is the newsletter. So this is one of them. This is our product update one. So we let everyone know every quarter, all of our new updates and our new features and so on. But yeah, so this is one of our emails. And I think, not that I was behind the design, but I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Just to pat myself on the back. The other thing that I was going to mention is we ran a campaign with suspended users. So that's people who did our free trial but didn't end up converting and paying into a plan. So to try and re-engage them, we add these people to a list, and then after a certain amount of time, which is usually a few months, we enroll them in this sort of automation workflow that you can see on the screen now. And basically it sends an email, has a bit of a delay, and then we'll send the next one. And there's only a few in there. We don't want to overwhelm our customers or annoy them, but it's just an easy way of sending out these emails at a regular cadence, not letting anyone fall behind or slip through the cracks, as my manager would hate to hear me say. But it really does. It saves a lot of time, and I think it can look quite scary, that automation builder, but it's actually, once you get in there and give it a go, it's really easy.
Absolutely. I think one thing that's often overlooked as well is that when you actually click into automations in Transpond on the paid plans, so starter and above, we have some templates there. So anything from wishing a prospect or a customer happy birthday once a year for that personal touch, through to when somebody visits your website, notifying you in Capsule. So there are lots of different templates there as well. If you do just want to load one up, see how it works, and then customize it as you see fit. So Kasia, I've got a question for you now that kind of does relate to that. So what other tooling do you utilize alongside Transpond, if you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're quite a decent sized team at Capsule and Transpond. So we do have quite a lot of tools that are all interconnected across various places. So we're using the standard stuff alongside Transpond, you know, like Google Analytics, all of those Google platforms. And what we do use a lot is Zapier, because it's something that works well with Capsule, it works well with Transpond, and it's one of those things where you can actually integrate pretty much any system you can think of. If you know you're using two tools that maybe don't have a direct connection into each other, we just whack open Zapier, and then 99% of the time we can get what we need from it. So we find that Zapier is a great tool for us to have at our disposal, of just, you know, passing data connections between from one place to the other. So at the moment, we're actually working on a Zapier from Transpond into our ad platform. So Meta, which is Facebook, Instagram, but also LinkedIn as well. So that email nurture series that Liv's just talked you through, anyone who receives that, we've basically built a calls app that says, okay, if you receive this email and you click on it, then we're going to fire you into an audience where you receive a specific type of ad from us. So all of a sudden you have this like multi-channel marketing going on by being able to link up the tools, which is really cool. And last but not least, of course, we use Capsule as well. So the sales guys use Capsule to obviously manage their pipeline, and I work quite closely with the sales team on looking at how we can use Transpond to maybe build out nurture email sequences to their sales leads. So, you know, if they've had opportunities from a year ago or something and they want to get back in touch, we can do that in a nice quick way through Transpond and Capsule and using the two together.
Yeah, that's the real benefit of them being sort of sister software. The way they link together and integrate is quite comprehensive. And in the customer success team, we're also using Capsule and Transpond quite heavily. And I think one of the things we found powerful with the Capsule integration for Transpond is that we can segment data really quickly. So for example, in Capsule, we can set a couple of filters up, maybe a tag filter looking for a specific type of prospect or customer, and then we can use custom field data as well, for example, to further filter that data. We can then save that as a save list in Capsule, which is dynamic, by the way. So as more people meet the criteria of that tag filter, of that custom field data, that list will grow naturally. It also is in real time synced with Transpond as a segment. So all that work we've done to put that contact list together in Capsule is also synced with Transpond. So there's no duplication of work. We can use any tags, any custom field data that's in Capsule for those purposes. So needless to say, that was previously manual and more time consuming. So it has given us lots of time back. And I think that's probably one of my favorite features of the integration. And like you said, Kasia, sales team are also utilizing it too. And in Capsule, we do have that last contacted on field as well. So you could create a segment for people who we haven't contacted in 30 days or more, who have open opportunities, for example, for a specific segment of people we do want to reconnect with. You could also create a Transpond automation for that. So when somebody meets those two criteria, you could send them a follow-up email or put them into a nurture sequence. So yeah, it's definitely another really good use case for the Capsule integration and automations. Let's now focus a bit on the content and messaging side of this. So guys, what type of content works best for our audience, and how are you sharing that content through Transpond?
I feel like this one's for me. We do quite a lot of content. Like we have webinars like this. We have our own podcast. We do social media posting, blogs, landing pages, website pages. I feel like there's probably more that are just eluding me right now. But Transpond is great for promoting some things such as the webinars, or posting some of the clips that we have from like podcasts through either social media scheduling tool, which is a bit of a mouthful, which makes it really easy to create those posts across a bunch of different social media networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on, and post kind of consistently and kind of get that ready ahead of time so we don't have to post it immediately, if you know what I mean. And yeah, we can sort it out that way. And yeah, like emails, I don't know if I mentioned that before, it's one of our content things, like the newsletter, obviously, like nurture campaigns, we use Transpond for that.
The social media one's an interesting one, isn't it? Because in terms of what performs well, from what I've seen from here and other companies that I've worked at, if you're posting, say you've got a company profile page on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it may be, the kind of content that always works well isn't the kind of content where we're trying to, push our product down people's throats. It's not the kind of content where we're very much focused on ourselves. The stuff that kind of works really, really well is actually the stuff that kind of is a bit behind the scenes. So whenever we post about our people, our team, the stuff that we get up to behind the scenes when we do company meetups or whatever, that's the stuff that gets engaged with the most. And it makes sense because you have that level of authenticity in the content that you post in. The people that are seeing it don't feel like they're being sold to, but you're kind of selling your company and the uniqueness of you as individuals, if that makes sense. So if I ever gave a tip to any sort of business owner that was looking to start posting on social media, it would be like focus on yourself, focus on you as a person, and kind of give your audience that view of behind the scenes, because it's going to work 10 times better than you just posting about the services that you offer all the time, whatever it may be. So yeah,
I definitely think that can like help differentiate yourself from like another brand, like putting a face to the name and so on. And I think I've seen a couple of customer reviews where people have said like when they were considering a couple of options that they've chosen as based on being able to understand who works here and what we're like and so on. So I think it has kind of swayed people in the past, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think we definitely put across that personal touch in sort of everything we create, which is great. And I think Transpond, the fact it allows that social media posting, SMS, as well as email marketing, we can sort of cover all bases. And a feature that's often overlooked in the campaign section is that we do have a calendar there, so you can actually look at when your emails going out are supposed to go out, social posts, so you can actually coordinate who is working on what to make sure that you're not releasing everything in one big bang, unless you want to do that. That kind of leads us on to another question, which is, could you give an example of a campaign that really stood out to you and why it stood out?
For me, I worked on a campaign this year, and I feel like it was the first time I was really let loose to take over a campaign sort of creatively. I think, yeah, we mentioned before about the suspended users. We created a campaign targeting them with ads and emails. I don't remember if we did social posts, but we definitely did those, and a landing page as well. But we called it the Jilted Lover campaign. So Capsule was basically positioned as like an ex-lover who was still in love with their ex, and really pining for them. And I'm still a bit surprised that I was just let to just kind of go wild with this. And I remember giving my work over to be reviewed and thinking, oh, this is too far. And it was like, yeah, this is perfectly wacky. But it really has sort of differentiated from other come back and try us out again kind of emails or posts or whatnot. I think having that having that slight bit of like, I don't know, unique distinctiveness um really helps with just doing something a bit fun and wild, and it really has. We've seen people come back and upgrade and so on, so it has worked. um but
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably my favorite. I know there's another one that my manager John ran this year about, basically did a persona research campaign where he spoke to our customers, or a large group of them, and what was coming up a lot when he's asking about the challenges as a small business owner or working a small business was the feeling of always having to put out fires, like, and the stress of that. Um, so he decided, like, okay, let's play on that. Let's make creatives, let's make ads and stuff, and emails where we literally just use like a firefighter image and kind of say like, I can't remember what the copy was exactly, but I think again, like using this imagery and sort of relating more to the audience really worked. Like I know, I don't know the metrics, but I know again that that performed really well, and I think it was just having a bit of edge, a bit of difference, and also predominantly using those feelings that our customers and our audience have, and relating to them and what it is they're after, what they need. I don't know if that was a question, but I've just kind of gone off on one.
Yeah. No, that covers it really nicely. And I think something that I take away from that is that it's about being memorable, I guess, isn't it? And having something that's unique. It's not a hard sell. It might be a bit funny, which I think you live are really good at creating funny content. And I think that goes down really well because everyone receives lots of emails every day. So you've got to stand out and be memorable. And I think that's something we do really well. That kind of leads us on to a question I've got for you, Kasia, about success and how do we measure or define that a campaign's been successful?
Yeah, so my honest answer to that question is it depends, which probably isn't what anyone wants to hear, but it genuinely does. It depends on who you're contacting, are you
Mm.
and the purpose for why you're contacting those people. So are you trying to contact a bunch of prospects to try and maybe get a meeting in the diary as quick as possible because you're behind on pipeline for the month and you want to kind of pull some quick levers to get there? If that's the case, then you'd be measuring that by, how many meetings have we got booked off the back of this campaign? However, if you are running a sort of newsletter to your customers like Liv does for us every month, then your metrics suddenly look very different. You're looking at the open rates within those emails in Transpond, because those open rates basically tell you how good are we at initially grabbing someone's attention there in their inbox when they receive hundreds of other emails from other companies every day. And then you're also looking at the click-through rates. So with Liv's newsletters, for example, we link through to a bunch of different content on our website or on our YouTube channel, whatever it may be. So what we look at there is, okay, are they actually getting clicked on? And if so, what's the click-through rate there? So the open to click-through rate. And that tells us, okay, not only has someone slightly been interested, but they've been interested enough to go and explore more and read this content, which is good for us because that's the purpose of the newsletter. And then if you want to take that a step further, you can marry it up with things like, time on page on Google Analytics to kind of validate what you're seeing from those click-through rates. So it's like, I want to double check we've had 400 clicks on this specific blog, but I want to check if people are actually reading that on the website end. So if their time on page is like 28 seconds or whatever typical time someone takes to scan, then you're like, fantastic, we've done our job. But if it's like, 2 seconds, then it's like, oh, they've clearly come on here and bounced off and they're not actually interested. So it's kind of, to reiterate, it's about understanding who you're contacting and why before you make that judgment of how you should be measuring your marketing. If you're sending a newsletter with cool content but expecting to get direct meetings, leads, sales from that, then you might want to rethink your approach. But if you are being very direct in your communications, you've got clear call to actions like book a meeting with us now or buy now, then of course that's how you're going to measure what you're doing. So yeah, it depends.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. Every customer I work with does things ever so slightly differently, and they're measuring different things: form sign-ups, site visits, videos watched, etc. So it's good to hear that that's to be expected. It depends on the medium through which we're presenting that as well. And indeed, with Transpond, you've got email, socials, SMS. So you've got different things you can track, and actually conversations as well in Transpond. So you might want to also quantify how many people are starting a live chat with us on the website, and actually, if we're out of hours, has the chatbot replied to anyone? And do we have some leads to follow up on? So again, lots of different things to measure. So
A
no,
great
thanks,
one
Kasia.
as well that we are setting up at the moment actually is if you have a piece of lead magnet content, so a really important piece of content that you maybe send to leads, I don't know, it could be a brochure for your company, it could be standard one pager that you just send out. If you have that on your website and make that downloadable using the gated content feature in Transpond, you essentially have an immediate direct list of potential leads right there for you to go after. So if you're, scratching your head of how can we understand, who's coming to our website and how can we convert them better, use things like gated content, just put your brochure on there, whatever it may be, or even just the contact sales form if you don't have one. They can then push through into Transpond, and you've got a standard list there of everyone who's indicated interest by filling in their details there. So there's loads of really cool things that you can do there.
That's a good point, actually. I spoke with a customer recently who mentioned they generally get more qualified leads through their gated content forms because, quite simply, people are putting their actual email address in because they want to be sent that content. We do offer the ability to redirect when someone's filled in that gated content form, but we usually recommend when using that, just send it via email so that you've got a more qualified email address there rather than a fake one. Yeah, that's good to hear. And also with the Capsule integration on Transpond forms, you can essentially add a tag to somebody. So whether you have one form or multiple, you can essentially see that they've got a web form tag in Capsule. You could have a save list that just looks for those web form contacts, or you could have multiple tags just to indicate which form they've come from. So you've got lots of customization options there. So I think it would be great now to go through and discuss some practical takeaways that our audience can use in their marketing efforts. Actually, before that, Kasia, practically speaking, how does Transpond compare to the other marketing tools you've used?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've used pretty much every single tool under the sun in my 14 years working in marketing. MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, you name it, I've used it. And I would say the thing that surprised me the most when I first started working here was how extensive Transpond actually is as a platform. So it can do the basics really well, but then as you start to get more comfortable with marketing, you start to think, how are you going to scale your efforts? It actually works really, really well for those more complex, complicated use cases. Now, I've come from companies where we've paid tens of thousands of pounds to use marketing automation software like Marketo and HubSpot and all these fancy things, Salesforce. And there isn't really much of a difference, if I'm being quite honest, between what Transpond can do and what those tools can do. So I would say that if you're after something that, is simple to pick up but can effectively scale with you as your business grows, then it's a great option. So yeah, honest view.
No, appreciate that. It's always interesting to hear from people that have used other platforms how it compares. And I think for those that are new to Transpond, it would be good to give some tips. So for people that are completely new or just learning Transpond, Kasia, if you could give one tip to someone who is new to the platform, what would it be?
I would like to give 2 tips. So the
Okay.
first tip that I would give is just have a go at everything like in there, because you never know, like it might become your best friend over time. And I always take the mindset of work smarter, not harder. And that's what pretty much most of Transpond is built for, to help you work smarter and not harder. So you can actually start setting up some level of marketing in your business and not spend your whole life thinking about marketing because you've got so many other things to do. So I would suggest just play around. My second point is kind of on the back of that. I think the automations area, if you can use that, then do, because again, on that theme of work smarter and not harder, it can unlock so much for you. So you could essentially replicate yourself 10, 20 times over, and being able to not just do more marketing, but be able to deliver a really good experience for your customers from the perspective of your brand. You can do a lot. I know that it's quite a scary thing to look at setting up those automations in the first place. It's feedback I've had from colleagues and friends like who've used that stuff so many times before. And the one bit of advice I'd give if you want to try it in Capsule would be to set up a test group that's maybe just yourself, a mate, or a colleague, even your partner, whoever, just you and 1 or 2 other people who you can put into a Transpond group, sorry, and enroll them in any automation you want to play around with, set up, test, and build. Because if you have that test group of yourself, and a couple of others, then what that'll allow you to do is just put yourself through those automations with absolutely no risks. So there's no worry of, oh, I'm about to turn this on for 100 people, and if it breaks, then it's going to look bad. And you kind of avoid that whole thing. You can test it out on yourself, make sure you're happy with it. And then when you are, take the test group out, put the correct contact list in, and away you go. So I definitely advise to do that.
Thanks, Kasia. That definitely makes sense with how easy it is to create groups and segments in Transpond. Like you say, you could just spin one up with a few contacts in who aren't going to mark you as spam if you send repeated tests. So there's some good tips. Thank you. I think from working with customers who've just started with Transpond, one thing I always say is data cleanliness, i.e. the sort of going through your contacts, making sure that emails are valid is like of utmost importance when it comes to deliverability and brand reputation. So Transpond does have a built-in list cleaning feature in the contacts section. So I always recommend trying that out. And also from a deliverability perspective, ensure your domain's authenticated. So we've been doing some work behind the scenes on that domain authentication flow to make it easier now. So I'd always recommend making sure your domain is authenticated just to ensure you get that deliverability that you need. With sort of the theme of people who are new to Transpond, it would be interesting to get your take on what sort of a mistake is that you see marketers making when using automation tools, and how you'd suggest they sort of avoid those mistakes that you see.
I mean, what Kasia said really about like the making sure that you test it is in a previous job where we used I think HubSpot and then Zapier. So like if a prospect had filled in a form on our website, we would want to get that lead or whatever straight into our Slack channel so that somebody from our outbound team could call and set up a meeting and so on. And we'd use Zapier to send that information across. But there were a number of times where we'd think it was all set up right, and we'd just kind of set it live and go, and then we'd kind of miss a lot of these. But so this kind of form was like book a call, or like we'll be back to you in 15 minutes and so on. So when we were dropping those, it obviously wasn't looking good for us. We were missing opportunities there. So yeah, all I'd say is just make sure you test it. And like Kasia said, like you can test it with yourself, like just in a safe and sort of environment. And I think it does also give the opportunity to see in sort of some other automation examples, like how things might land, how your end user, your audience might receive them, like how it feels. Because if it feels like it's happening too much or just doesn't quite land right, you can see all that firsthand rather than waiting for a customer or lead to see it and be unimpressed, for instance.
Yeah, that's a good point. You'd rather experience that, have that bad experience before a prospect or customer does. And the automation builder in Transpond does also have that test mode. So you can go through that and see where people are landing and just double check all of your automation triggers are indeed working as you'd expect.
Yeah.
And I suppose another question I had was, how do you think small improvements in marketing compound over time?
I think a lot of marketing is about doing things that will compound over time. Whether that's sort of building your websites like domain authority with sort of search engine optimization again, but building out like consistent blogs and making sure that you're producing that content that teaches and explains things to your audience, but then also doing things like posting on social media and stuff so that you're continuing to get like your brand out there or like your personal brand out there, I guess, like we were saying before. These things all add up. There's no such thing really as overnight success in marketing. So you've got to be doing these little things consistently. And if you can across multiple channels to eventually sort of see it snowball and get that sort of brand recognition and so on. I mean, if you don't have a large like marketing department, it might be like, okay, well, I can't do all these billion things, and that's absolutely fine. Just start with what you can do small things like posting on social media, and you'll sort of see that recognition. You'll see these touch points for your users sort of add up, and yeah, it will go somewhere. I'm starting to ramble now.
Yeah, I
No.
second that. Consistency is key, but it goes back to that point that I was saying before. It's all about working smarter, not harder. You don't have to be spending your life thinking about marketing to get the consistency in terms of output. Like there are so many tools that we have inside Transpond that can help you do that. So that social media scheduling tool, right? You can prompt that with AI to write those posts for you, and you can sit down for an hour on a Sunday, Tuesday evening, whenever you want to do it, whenever you've got some free time, sit down for an hour, bash out, I don't know, 10, 12 posts, and all of a sudden you have a social schedule for the next 2, 3 weeks taken care of just because you've taken an hour out of your day one time. So it's not like I have to come back to this every single day kind of thing. It's the same again with the emails. If you're a bit stuck with how to say what you want to say, just put it into the AI content assistant. It'll whip it out for you. Of course, like we were saying at the start of the session, make sure you check what it's coming up with. Like you have to read it and make sure you're happy with it, but use that sort of stuff. And of course, like I was saying before as well, the automations, use those because there's so much that you can unlock by doing that. If you do have things like a contact form on your website, for example, then you can have an automated follow-up straight away going out, email response like, hey, we'll be with you as soon as possible kind of thing. So yeah, it's just about unlocking all of those tools at your disposal to not spend too much time on marketing, but get the most out of that consistency of doing marketing, if that makes sense.
Does. No, thank you for that. I think the reality is for a lot of our customers are smaller businesses, so it does make sense to block out that time. There has been research that shows that doing a lot of one thing in one block is much more time efficient than doing one blog one day, another day. You sort of really gain that productivity if you block out time to do a specific task multiple times. And like you say, the Transpond social scheduling allows you to do that. And we also have the optimize button on the social side of it as well. So if you are posting to multiple social platforms, maybe Facebook, maybe X, LinkedIn, etc., you can optimize on a per platform basis from within Transpond. So it will check if you're within the character count. If you're into hashtags and emojis, it can totally do that for you as well. And you can also upload images to that too, which is an important part of it. And it will let you know if the image is of optimal resolution, image ratio, etc. So a very good all-round tool. Keith, if it's all right with you, I'd like to come to you and ask what sort of questions we've had. Is there anything we can answer live today from the Q&A?
Apologies, I was just I was just jumping back and forth between the chat and the Q&A section. Yeah, so there's been quite a lot of engagement throughout the session. Some people that are new to the platform and want just a bit of an understanding around functionality. So I've shared your previous webinar recording, James, in the chat so that people can kind of watch that if they just want some tips and tricks for kind of getting started to the platform. There was a question earlier, quite a good question about like some examples of nurture campaigns, how you might use a kind of nurture sequence within Transpond. So I hopefully answered that and gave the example of things like onboarding. So like onboarding new clients, keeping in touch with them about your products and services, or kind of lead management as well, like nurturing leads, keeping them warm. So hopefully that's kind of been answered in that regard. Also, quite a couple of questions about using forms and also using gated content. So I think earlier in the session we had some good examples about how we've implemented forms, but I also shared kind of the guides that we have and some information on how forms can be embedded or hosted into kind of business practice. Some questions have been a little specific, so I've just kind of directed a couple of people to support in that regard. But yeah, a lot of people kind of just looking to get an understanding of the functionality, how they can bring it into their kind of business practice. And again, just looking for some kind of examples. So hopefully I've answered as best I can in terms of how to implement automations, forms, a couple of things around landing pages as well. So I've logged a product request on how we could maybe add some additional features to those areas as well. But I'm just going to have a little last look while we're all kind of sat here as well.
It's worth noting, by the way, for those that are currently on other marketing platforms considering Transpond, or you maybe have both at the same time, you can integrate Transpond with platforms such as MailChimp. So if you do want to bring in your audiences, templates, any other assets such as images, you can do that. So you can bring in some things like Keith mentioned there in the comments. You can't necessarily transplant automations from one to another, but they're super easy to build in the actual user interface in Transpond.
Yeah, and what we always say is obviously if you have specific questions about your business, it can sometimes be hard to just answer them today because it's a little shorter, a little more fast paced. But you can obviously engage with our support team directly if you want to know where Transpond fits into your kind of tech stack, how it fits into your business, and we'd be happy to answer all the kind of specific and make sure that you're aware of the integration capabilities fully and that, yeah, you just know how it can kind of fit into the operations that you run.
Because everybody uses it slightly differently, don't they? So, yeah. Well, thanks for that, Keith. I think that brings us nicely to the end of the session today. So thank you, Kasia, Liv, and Keith, and also to everybody who tuned in today. If you do want to see how we put everything we've discussed today into practice, please do keep an eye out for our upcoming newsletters, blogs, podcasts, and of course, future webinars. As Keith mentioned as well, we've got lots of video resources online as well. So please keep an eye out for those. To finish off, I'd like to actually finish on a question. I'd like to ask my marketing colleagues, what is the next step you'd encourage the audience to take after the session today?
Do you want to start, Liv, or should I?
Mine's not like a very highbrow one. And it's very much based on my own experience of starting with like any platform, no matter how like easy it is or like how uncomplicated it looks and so on. I always feel a little bit overwhelmed, like starting with a new tool and not really knowing, where to begin. But I would just recommend, like, again, with this test group that we keep talking about, build a test group, go in and just give things a go, see how they work. And like that's how I've always done it with tools. And I think that's the same with Transpond, just kind of get in there and try all those tools out with like the automations the automations tool. Sorry. I just think it really all like falls into place once you give it a go. So
My one piece of advice would probably be don't give up on it. Just keep being consistent, be persistent with it. Like, market is a long-term game. It's not about short, quick win results. So don't give up, keep at it, and hopefully, yeah, Transpond will help you get there along the way. There was a quick question, by the way, James, just very quickly from someone who wanted to know how can they try Transpond before we go.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we do have a Transpond free plan. So if you did want to try it, you can sign up for the Transpond free plan. I'm not sure if one of my colleagues could put in the chat a link to the page where you can sign up to Transpond. We have a pricing page which has comparisons between the different plans. It's got from starter to ultimate at the top. We also have a free plan. So like I say, you can spin up an instance of Transpond, give it a go, see if you like it, and I'm sure you will. But thank you everybody for joining us today. If you do need any support with Transpond, please contact our support team. It's support@transpond.io. Thank you everybody for your time, both from my side and everybody in the audience. It's been great having you here, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.